Okay, great. So we're at about 4:05 and we have conducted no business yet. We are just getting started with the recording. So I guess first I'll just ask, I recognize most but not all of the names on here. So are there any guests that we have already? You could raise your hand or unmute and introduce yourself, or you don't have to, it's not required, but if you wanted to, this would be a good opportunity. Mostly so that
Yeah, this is Vince Bandersky.
Hi.
My question is, it looks like there's two guests online, the other being the Planning Commission. Should we wait a little bit?
Sure.
To see if anybody else joins us, because you're going to be reviewing stuff that most of us are familiar with.
That's kind of what I was getting at here. So yeah, I'd be happy to hold on a little bit.
And I guess I'd submit to Mark, how long do you think we might wait, Mark?
Well,
I'm kind of dealing with the phone call here, Vince. I am so sorry. Could you repeat that?
My question to Leah was, it looks like there's only two guests.
Yes.
And the rest are commissioners, should we wait a little bit to see if anybody else joins us? And if so, how long?
Oh, yeah, I would wait, well, let me get Ed on because I've got him on the phone. So we'll get Ed on. Let's give it 15 minutes or so anyway, if you guys, I think that's very reasonable. And then we'll still go through the process. And Leah, if you'll record this, I'd appreciate it.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. And, we'll have it recorded for posterity. And, if nobody shows, that's not a big surprise. I mean, that's not uncommon even for an open house. And like I've talked to a couple of you, unless of course you have, food and drinks, that usually gets a few more people. And, but in this particular case, I'm really not going to be too surprised if we don't get a lot of folks.
I'll take a rain check.
Well,
Max.
I'll tell you, you can, but I want to make sure that we expose this as much as possible and give everybody as much opportunity as they can possibly have to participate. And that's what we're doing. We're going to go through the process of talking through the story map and take any questions that folks might have from the public, and then we'll move along. And then we'll have our public hearing coming up in December. Like I was saying, just for the record, I've got this, it's been in the paper for quite a while. It's been on our webpage. It's also been on our Facebook page. So we've done a pretty good job of getting the opportunity out there for folks to participate. And similarly with the master plan itself, we've done the 63-day review. That's coming up to an end soon. And so, we've given pretty ample opportunity for folks to respond. And frankly, guys, two ways to look at it. Either, they are, they're not interested, which, I hate to think because I'm very interested. That would hurt me greatly. Or they feel like it's just such an awesome plan. And, I got to tell you, listening to David Laddie, who, when he says good things like he has about this being the best plan that he's seen and the best process that he's seen, I take that to heart. And so, I'm hopeful and I feel pretty good about it. If people don't show, I'll be a little disappointed, but I'll be able to
get Ed on board, and at 4:15, Leah can start. How's that sound?
I just muted myself. That sounds great to me. That's perfect. does anybody have any unique Thanksgiving plans this year? I've heard a number of folks in our staff meeting this morning say, you know what, I didn't like turkey anyways. We're having a pot roast this year because we can. We decided to forego the turkey and I'm just eating a giant pile of mashed potatoes. That's all I wanted anyway. So I just want the mashed potatoes and the stuffing and the green bean casserole, and that's what's happening at my house. How about you guys?
This is Vince. I got a email from somebody that said because of the restrictions, only two families for Thanksgiving, but 30 can attend a funeral. So they're celebrating the funeral of their turkey, and they're asking people to bring a dish. How's that sound?
Good luck. That sounds like a lot of people getting together.
I know.
Was there any snow in Lansing overnight?
Well, I'm in Ann Arbor, but we sure had some. And of course, I'd volunteered to take my friend to the airport at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was like, well, that's a good way to celebrate the first stupid snowfall of the year. Go drive in it.
Leah or Mark?
Yes.
This is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Will this be recorded in a fashion that it will be shared on the township website so people can view this at their leisure?
Yes, well, we're recording, and so then that takes a minute to convert it into a YouTube link, but that's how it ends up. It's just as a YouTube link, and then you can do whatever you'd like with it.
Well, I'm just, because there's some concern about the few number of people attending, that maybe it's inconvenient, maybe the time is inconvenient for some, and but if it's going to be available to for people to view it later, then that may help some people to view the storybook.
Yeah, and then also the story map itself is available, you know, all the time, and you can just, there's the survey link right in it. So really, that's one of the things that we're trying to, you know, pivot resourcefully to, is usually we do just hold like one open house and there's an hour and a half, and that's where everybody's comments are. But this time, even if nobody comes here, this is really more for folks who want an opportunity to just, like, you know, see us and, you know, speak to us directly. But we did actually, I'll go through it. We did actually get one comment that was just submitted through, you know, somebody went through the story map and filled out the survey, and so
Great.
that's what
It's
we're
working.
hoping to see. Yeah.
All right. Well, I have Ed sort of here beside me through my phone, so I'm going to just let him participate that way, and he's good with it. I'm good with it.
Sure.
Did we provide for that whole 15 minutes? It's 4:13 that I see. And there's another participant. Here we go.
Okay. Well, if you like, I'm happy to, you know, kind of start slow here. And then of course,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything that isn't already publicly available. So here we go. Am I sharing my screen here? Can you guys see the story map?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has the little thing around it and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. So I have done this in an incognito window from my computer so that it, you know, acts just as if it would on the back end. It doesn't look that different from my end, but sometimes you're logged in and it lets you do things that the rest of the world can't do, and you don't know that. So welcome, if in fact there are any guests here, to our Q&A for the Blanc Township Master Plan Story Map. So we've put this together so that folks have kind of a more accessible, slightly summarized version of the master plan to take a look at, to really take a look at some of the spatial analysis and mapping that we did, and to hit the high points. So when we put this together, we really use that last chapter, the implementation chapter, as our guide to, you know, to really pull out the themes that we have been talking about through this entire project. So right up top here, here's a link to the whole master plan. So this is the township's master plan page, which has the draft, the overview, and then the introduction that we did way back in the summer now. So that's available on top. I also wanted to let folks know at the beginning of the map, rather than waiting until all the way at the end, that there was an opportunity for feedback. So there's a link to the Survey Monkey up top here in case folks wanted to have that open, you know, sort of while they were going through the plan, or to take a look at what the feedback looks like or whatever. So we started out, this text in the master plan, what is a master plan? It doesn't, it's a little different from what's found in the plan, and it's basically just sort of an introduction of what the heck we're doing when we say a master plan anyways. And then we go into the community and planning history. We use this image, which I just thought was tremendously informative. This is from the resources, the historic resource plan that was put together, and that they got it, you see, from the Heritage Museum, showing that the township itself actually historically was one of the big ones when we first started surveying land way back when. So we have a little bit about the community history, and then also the planning history, which details, you know, kind of the fact that we're building on the backs of previous plans, and this didn't come out of nowhere. This is the next step in the planning evolution of the township. We talk about the community engagement, which, as you guys all know, really heavily informed all the findings that we have here. So talked about the 3 kinds of engagement that we did. There were the community survey, which we got at through 2 different methods, one by invitation to a sampling of households in the township, and then much broader participation through the really excellent outreach efforts that the township did. There were a few of those sort of meeting in a box situations where we, you know, packed up some opportunities for feedback and took them to at least a couple of locations throughout the township. And then the student engagement, where my colleague Michelle and I spent the whole awesome day in high school government classes. So we had 5 of them, I believe, one right after the other, and that was in 2 parts. We also, so while we were there, we kind of gave them the hardest planning problems that we have and asked them to really think through some trade-offs, like, you know, sidewalks and residential development versus being able to get more homes in there, or say development in the floodplain versus, you know, saying no to it and having good jobs in the community. So we really asked them to do that kind of insightful planning. And then we also gave all of the students that we had in contact with and received about 100 responses back a separate survey, not the same community survey that everybody did, but a separate one that we actually did in more of a statewide basis. It wasn't just township kids who participated in this, and that was a little bit broader. So we took all of those results and summarized them in the back portion of the plan, where we laid out the activities, because we wanted to really draw a very close connection between the things that we asked, the things that we heard, and the things that we recommended. Moving into the existing land use section of the plan. So we talked about 2 major things there. One is what shows up as unimproved or undeveloped land within the township. And we wanted to point out that, you know, in a land use map, that's the only way that it shows up, but that these, you know, undeveloped lands do provide some ecosystem services that are important when we talk about natural features. And so while we have an opportunity before the township, every last square of it is fully developed, we do have a chance to take note of what we should preserve in an undeveloped state for these ecosystem services. And then we talk a bit about the residential, commercial, and industrial uses throughout the township. We note that commercial industrial, as it almost always is clustered along major transportation corridors, and that by and large, the largest land use in the township is improved residential, which again, we're kind of a bedroom community, so that makes a lot of sense, and it fully comports with what we would expect to see. We go from there to talking more specifically about those natural features, as opposed to not just being an unimproved portion of the township, but, you know, what actually goes on in that natural land. Water quality came out in all of our community engagement as a really high priority. So we spent a good deal of focus on the activities that preserve water quality. So wetlands are one of those things that helps us preserve water quality. I had noted in the last future land use map, and I really don't know how far back this goes, but certainly the last one, the wetlands were shown right on the future land use map, which is, I think, a tremendously valuable development tool and that we preserved as we came forward with it, because it does have a big impact on how developable a land is and how desirable it should be to develop that land. So we talk about wetlands. We talked a little bit about the floodplain and the surrounding flood hazard areas. And then tree canopy cover is also an excellent protector of water quality. So, trees and their roots, they really, first of all, having space where trees grow is often also space where rainwater is collected. So unless it's in a cement well, there's usually some dirt around it. So in areas where you have high tree cover, you probably also have groundwater recharge. And secondly, the tree roots themselves, do perform some cleaning of the water as it filters through the system. So we know that the township has excellent tree canopy coverage. We don't see this everywhere that we look. It is a really good job. And so our task there is to preserve it, which the township already has sort of regulatory tools in place to do. And so we just want to highlight their importance. We talk about housing first and then also neighborhoods. So the main idea in housing was that the township already does a really good job, especially compared to other township formats, of providing a variety of housing options. So it's not just single family detached or a giant apartment building, and those are the only two ways that you can live in the township. We already have pretty diverse housing formats. And so we wish to support that and expand on that. There are some, demographic changes that really continue to support development of those. We call them missing middle formats because they're not missing so much in the township, but in the grand scheme, nationally, we've overbuilt in those two formats, tall and dense or really spread out. And what we're looking for are some options in the middle. So we talk a bit about how well the township is already doing in that and the reasons to continue to support it, and then the ways in which we could do that. Taking one kind of click outward from the housing level is the neighborhood scale. And so here it's easiest we have the best data for, is I guess how I'll put that, for comparing areas of the township by census tract. And so while that does not line up perfectly with what we would consider a neighborhood in the township itself, I know that, largely, kind of the subdivision that you live in provides much of the neighborhood identity in the township. There's not great data collected there. So we did the best that we could by, trying to understand how the different portions of the township are different. And so we've done that both in a visual format and the map here, and then also there's a summary of neighborhood characteristics by census tract. And really this is good information to know and also to have on hand when we're looking at the sort of more specific regulations that show up in the zoning ordinance, how big our lot sizes, how those kinds of things. Centers and special focus areas. So we talked about, that's the residential development, and now we're moving on to the commercial and industrial development. And those sometimes co-occur, they're sometimes highly separated. The organizing principle that we've chosen to lean on here when we're talking about it in the township are transforming, enhancing, or preserving these centers. First, identifying areas of the township where there's commercial or industrial activity. And then looking at each of them and saying, well, how is this, we'll call it a node, how is this node functioning now? And what would we want to do to make it function as we want it to? So the biggest areas of change would be in the transform areas. So they offer prime development, redevelopment, and improvement opportunities. And I've said in the plan and here that they may be considered the sites that will host the township of the 21st century. So the things that we do forward will likely happen in these sites that we want to see some change on. And they were the DDA area down here in the south of the township. That is a newly created DDA within the last couple of years. And sometimes in areas, DDAs are formed where there is already development that needs basically redevelopment, and that's not the case here. This is, land that is not currently developed, that is waiting for its first development, but that has had assets identified all the way around it and in proximity to it and accessible to it that really make it a prime location for good development, future development in the township. And most of that work, that kind of groundwork, the zoning, the statutory, all of that work was completed just before the beginning of this plan. So this plan spends a little, supports and reinforces that, but spends a little more kind of exploratory effort in the south end of town here in the Point area. And while there was one corridor study that was completed, I think in 2008, that took a detailed look at that corridor, which we've codified and supported here. We were also able to ask a couple of questions about it on the survey and to really kind of hopefully get the township a little further forward in the development that's going to happen on the north end of town there. Then we have the enhanced areas. So those are largely, there are 4 of them. They're largely functioning as they're intended, but could certainly use some improvements, additional amenities. Every place can always be better, right? So those are what we kind of call the Hollywood Center, which is where the sort of new theater was built. And then there's certainly much more room for development down there. That includes the Fenton Hill Center, which is largely that intersection, but it radiates out in each of the sides. And then the Heritage Park Center and the Industrial Park Center, which are kind of, next door neighbors, one in industrial development, specialized for industrial development, one specialized for commercial development. And as I said, all of those are well developed. Our recommendations were largely limited or focused on areas like additional landscaping, improving pedestrian and bicycling connections, and upgrading visual elements like signage and lighting to make them consistent throughout the township. So again, those are not heavy lifts, but they certainly require some attention, and having them on our radar will allow us to give them that. And then finally, the preserve area, Grand Blanc Township, a lot of the development is pretty young, not all of it, but a lot of it is. And so there are not, vast collections of historic resources like there are in some of our, say, older urban cores. But the township's historic resource survey, which is also, I think within the last 10 years, did very clearly identify this Perry settlement area as an area that has some rich historic resources. And in fact, I think that an entire strategic plan was developed to ensure that that area develops in a way that preserves its history. So we've again tried to reference that and put tenets in our plan that continue to support that, which is, that's something that we try really hard to do with master plans, is to ensure that they carry forward other good work and are able to tie together. We do a lot of work in our little, specialized silos. And so we want to make sure that we can pull that together where possible. A little deeper dive into the North Grand Blanc Township area, the Point and Saginaw Street. So if you can see on this map, here's the Point here. And then here's a 1/4 mile radius and a 1/2 mile radius, both of which are considered, a walkable distance. So that just hits the Township Hall here, and it gets us down here all the way to Heritage Park. And then one thing that is a little difficult to see here, but that exists, is right up headed north and south, and then running over east and west, and then all the way up is the proposed Iron Bell Trail. So one kind of really key point of development in this area will be to take advantage of that Iron Bell Trail. It is a really exciting development. It will bring people to, by necessity, will bring people to the community who would not have been here otherwise, because they're just coming along that trail. So how do we make it inviting for them to stop, to have an ice cream cone, to fill there, how do we make it inviting for them to stop in the township? Other considerations there are, how do we handle the traffic? That's a pretty vehicular-centered corridor, especially in Saginaw Street. And so how do we make sure that we can accommodate all of our users? As redevelopment happens there, we asked what kind of development we want to see, and it was a very strong finding. I would say, I want to say it was in the 80%, said that they would like to see what we called traditional style development, closer to the road, accessible by pedestrians, accessible by bicycles, 2 stories if we can get it, kind of mixed uses with a residential or office up top, better building materials. That showed up very strongly in the survey, saying that they would really like to see long-lasting and attractive development happen there. So that has implications. That's not the most affordable type of development, or we would see it all over. So we've talked in the master plan a little bit about what the township can do to kind of make that vision happen as a partner. And again, as I was saying, so this is the southern portion of the township, the DDA district, and the Tech Village Center. So as I said, a good deal of planning had already been done just previous to this effort that really illuminates the way forward there. The purpose of this master plan is to, sort of summarize that all in one piece, and to where we can, as, sort of with our larger focus, to support that, connect with it, talk about what might be needed around it to make sure that that is as viable as it can possibly be. Circulation and corridors. So this turned out to be just about the most exciting portion of this master plan, and I can't say that that is the case with all of the transportation chapters in a master plan. But what we heard loudly, clearly, and from every corner was a real desire for more transportation choice in the city, and for an opportunity to get out of cars, either for recreation or for transportation. So we consulted with the Friends of the Grand Blanc Grid, who also, have a similar vision. There is a good history. So you can see down here, a history of an adopted pathways plan, of a county regional non-motorized plan. Park and recreation plan also has a really substantial focus on trails. And now we have this citizen group, the Grand Blanc Grid. We, again, heard survey results. We heard the students say, we heard strongly that this is an area where the township is really looking for some improvement. The citizens of the township are really looking for some improvement and are willing to invest in it. We asked questions about that, and received an answer that really agreed all the way around with that. So here is the non-motorized paths plan. This bright line is the Iron Bell Trail, and these dotted lines are the proposed paths that were largely taken from the Grand Blanc Grid's work. So here's where, we've kind of tried to pull together some previous efforts and then identify a couple of priorities. So we, in this plan, have identified as priority investment areas up here in the northwest portion of town, and then the connector between the newly created DDA area and the city of Grand Blanc. Those are areas which, kind of had the greatest amount of attention and the greatest amount of concurrent efforts that we could kind of pull together. So for the life of this plan, which again, we have to crack it open in 5 years and take a look at it, so that's not tremendously long, and it does take a while to get things done on the roads. So for the life of this plan, we think that it might be the most fruitful to focus our efforts in these couple of areas, along with, and I can't say this enough, supporting the efforts for the Iron Bell Trail, which kind of, that has its own momentum, but we for sure want to be right in line with it. Sidewalks were another issue that came up frequently. So sidewalk coverage is pretty good inside the subdivisions and pretty bad once you get outside the subdivision. So at a minimum, I believe the consensus was that all new commercial and industrial development, and probably residential, in as much as we can get it, should have sidewalks with it. Like, that should just be a requirement, and we should be working with that right up the front. Now, how we get sidewalks, into areas that are presently not served by them, that's going to be a different question, and it will probably require a mix of tools to get there. So say if a subdivision doesn't have a sidewalk in it now, it may not be the best thing to, kind of make sure to shoehorn one in, but it will be the right thing to do to make sure that, traffic remains calmed on those roads such that it can be shared with a bike until you can get to an unmotorized pathway. We talked a little bit about bus service in the township, which right now just goes basically down the Saginaw Road corridor. We talked about opportunities for expansion in the near term and in the long term. But probably really the most important thing about that conversation was just ensuring that our non-motorized infrastructure can connect to the bus route. So there's always that, first mile, last mile problem with the bus, well, consideration, I'll call it, with the bus system that gets you to a road, but then that probably, there's still some distance to cover before you get to your home. And really, when we're supporting transit in the township, that's probably where our efforts would be best spent. Services, facilities, and assets. So generally here, it's our opportunity in the township to say, what are we really in control of in terms of, infrastructure and assets? And then also, what is in our township that maybe we're not in control of, but that is very valuable. And so for our continued health, we need to understand that and how we need to support it. So the things that we do, we have that lovely government center that we maintain, which is presently considering expansion. We have Parks and Recreation, which is newly independent, but which we, had plenty of things that we provided even before then. So those are kind of the things that are under our direct control. We also, it's not as exciting and there weren't many changes recommended, so it's not on here, but in the whole plan, there's also a discussion of water and sewer infrastructure. And then the things that we consider to be assets in the township, that we can just support but are not in control over, are education and healthcare. The school system is, widely lauded. And in fact, when I was learning about the Tech Village efforts that came before this, those were all sort of very clearly predicated on the idea that the township is producing highly skilled, 18-year-olds for what you're going to get at 18. They're college bound, they have a connection, this is an excellent resource here. How can we capitalize upon that? And so my understanding, and it says explicitly in that plan that, sort of the excellence in the school system is really setting us up for this large land use capability, which I think is pretty exciting. And then of course that dovetails with the Ascension Genesis campus and its surrounding area. There's some lighter manufacturing, some research and development immediately south of that. That's all co-located in a way that, those are things that we have the ability to support. So for example, by, designating those surrounding areas as future land use in our future land use map as having suitability for these high-tech jobs, that is a way in which we're supporting these assets. And so then finally, the future land use planning itself. So on purpose, this has a great similarity to the 2012 future land use map. I mean, development is slow. It's an iterative process that builds on itself. You just don't want to show up with a new plan and be like, you know what, let's rearrange all the things, because it's not going to happen. So we took the 2012 plan and we basically, updated it with all of the ideas that I've just talked about thus far. And for sort of ease of comparison, especially for the commissioners that are here, the folks who sort of use this document as a technical tool, we've made it a point to kind of highlight the areas that were changed and to talk about what they were beforehand and what they are now. I will say that there's really just a couple of themes. Those themes are the conversion or the designation of some additional areas of village mixed use. And I'm not remembering actually if there were any at all on the previous future land use map. It might have just been discussed, but not on the map. If there were, they were in pretty small areas and we've expanded them to a couple. So the idea with the village mixed use future land use is that it's meant to be a mixed use of residential and commercial, residential office and commercial, but it also specifies some qualities of the development and of the site itself. So this village mixed use, should it be translated into a zoning district category, would require things like pedestrian access, and it would require those higher building materials, maybe two-story development so that you could get the mixed use in, some additional landscaping. It really has some site features that make it feel more like an environment, like between the buildings as opposed to just inside them. So we've added those in a couple of areas. There has been some upgrading of density. So where areas that previously might have been, sort of lower density, now are being conceived of as able to support a little higher density in terms of residential development. So that's a lot of them there. And then finally, there were a couple of areas, especially down here, where, so it's hard to see a little bit, but this purple line is the new DDA boundary. So that is new since the last master plan. And so, I mean, really in an area where you're trying to concentrate development, where you've gone to a whole planning process to say, we've looked at our whole township and this is where we should have industrial and commercial development. You don't want to leave a whole lot of it that's, you know, sort of planned for really low density residential. So we have some, because this real estate category, we really didn't touch it at all. It is presently, you know, serving as our least dense development category. But other than that, in areas that, you know, we're sort of already planned for low density single family residential, we've said that it is appropriate to upgrade that to, say, commercial density, that it's appropriate to upgrade it to moderate density residential, and that in some cases it's appropriate to have it this flexible development category. And what the flexible development category is, it's not one that you see on all future land use maps, but it is an excellent idea. It says that in these areas, we're more open than we are in other places to a good idea for it. So while we set some parameters on what we'd like to see in those areas, for the most part, they are an invitation to a developer to come read our master plan, understand the things that we want to see in these general areas, and then to propose a development that meets those goals, and for us to engage in development, say, with a planned unit development agreement, which is where we and the you, the township, and the developer engage in a negotiation that, you know, really sets the parameters for like height, density, those bulk requirements, that has uses that are identified in the master plan, and that meet some of the goals of the developer who has brought us this, you know, whatever their idea that they're trying to accomplish is. And so that's a category that, like I said, you don't see on all future land use maps, but I think it's an excellent tool and really pointing to places where we would like to see something unique or innovative. And then finally, I'll just show you how this works. So this future land use map is pretty small and you can't zoom here, but we did put a version that you can zoom here. I found that then I had to click on this open in a browser before I really got to zooming on it. And then it took a minute to load. So maybe I'll give it a second to load and come back to it. And then just point out that the other thing on here is in fact the survey. And when you click on that, there's just the two questions. Tell us what you think about the content of the master plan. Tell us what you think about the format of the story map. This guy's still thinking. Do we have any? Oh, there we go. So then you can see, you can get to it much better. It's still a little fuzzy, but it takes a minute and it resolves. This one has the name of every single little road on it. So this is the one that you would want if you're like, I have a question about this particular parcel. This one is at a scale, which of course now it's at the bottom. This one is at a smaller scale. So I took the little road names off because they were really just clutter, and I made the major roads bigger. So you can sort of locate yourself generally, but you won't be able to see every little road name on there. Okay, now I think would be the right time to take questions if we have any.
I can start, Leah, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
I'm not Blake. Blake is my son. I don't know if you saw, and to answer one of your previous questions before the start, 4 to 6 might have been an awkward time, in my opinion, for the meeting. I work in Grand Blanc. I live in Pinckney, so you're familiar with my drive. And my office closes at 3. So it was a little, I'm like, all right, everyone be really quiet. I'm in a Zoom meeting. And of course they were trying to do like horses, but my name's Lauren Walter. I work with construction in Grand Blanc Township. And so the land use planning map is always very interesting to me and for my clients in terms of what we might be able to do in the future that best supports the township plans and what options there might be for that. So basically, my main questions kind of surround some of the change in land use. You know, there are 6 lows changed to a higher density, 4 neighborhood densities changed to a village mixed use or whatnot. And just kind of like you said, RE wasn't even touched. Based on one of the comments you had in the story map that there was a demonstrated preference for smaller homes on smaller parcels. And based on the development map of developed land versus non-use, there's very little RE that's undeveloped. And I'm just wondering what the township's thoughts are on leaving it like that, or if they would be flexible, taking into consideration that, people might not want an acre of land in Grand Blanc Township anymore. Grand Blanc isn't the, much like Pinckney, not really the entirely rural outlying community that it was 20, 30 years ago. So I'm just kind of wondering what the thought is for flexibility on having more open space versus larger lots for development.
Well, I will just start with a planning perspective on that, and then I'd like to give it away to, to a local here, right? And so from our, sort of bird's eye view there, the rural estate or the rural residential was an important land use category to preserve as it is, because there isn't a whole lot of land in the township, right? Townships are much bigger than cities. So in that whole, 36-ish square miles minus the city, there is no preserve or conserve, or there's no area that we're sort of planning to leave untouched. So the rural residential is sort of serving that purpose. It's presently not as well served. There are areas that are not served at all with water and sewer. And so the idea there is to, both kind of, to leave the development pressure off of that particular corner of the township. And then also, sort of on the flip side of that to, we haven't engaged in the planning that it would take for it to be different on account of the infrastructure. So now I would leave this to somebody who has a closer perspective.
So I'll give a little bit of perspective on that. I appreciate what you said, and it's a great question. And I don't disagree with the idea of maybe smaller lots, but it does need to occur in areas where the infrastructure is in fact available. And that's not everywhere within the township yet, but the township is looking to expand that. We keep doing that every year. And as we expand, I would suspect, and as time goes on, I would suspect that, those things will change. There will be a higher demand for the smaller lots. But right now, there's a real strong desire from my perspective as the planning and building director with the folks that I talk to in the community to preserve the rural character that Grand Blanc Township has. That is an important element of Grand Blanc Township. It's a nice drive. A lot of areas in Grand Blanc Township are quite nice. There's a lot of farming activities still that are going on. And the idea behind this approach at this time is to concentrate a little bit more on establishing, some nodes and some development centers that might be able to handle the increase in the density as opposed to spreading it out. We actually looked at those edges of the community and realized that there's not an awful lot of other services in some of those areas to warrant and to support the higher density. So that was another factor that we looked at, as well as looking at the issues associated with the infrastructure. But we did have some interest in looking at some of the outlying, the northeast and the southwest corners come to mind. When we looked around those areas, there just isn't a lot of service, commercial or other kinds of places for folks to go. And so that was another one of the reasons. But I think just preserving the rural character is a real important aspect to a lot of folks who live and have lived here in the township. And once we start pushing that development envelope and getting more and more interest in folks actually requesting and wanting to have those expanded areas, I think then we might give a lot more consideration. But that just hasn't been a big part or a big push from this master plan exercise.
So I guess a follow-on question would be falling back to the comment about sidewalks being mandatory, because a community aspect and a walking path is extremely important. And I love the trails. The rails to trails down here are amazing, and they've developed huge portions of connectivity. But so then if my developers come and talk to me, we're not putting sidewalks on rural lots, correct? Because on 1 acre parcels in a rural setting, you don't want people trucking across your lawn. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. Is that something, if it does become a zoning reg, is that something that the township would consider as okay, your RE, you do have paths through nature areas. We're not going to require you to put sidewalks against your street kind of thing to kind of preserve that ruralness of the development.
Yeah, you're right, but we would want to establish and create some kind of connectivity no matter what. So they may not go along all the streets necessarily, but maybe then what we would want to do is design the streets to be a little wider to accommodate bicycle traffic on those streets. So there's a number of things that we can do as we get into the more specific aspects of zoning. And we will do that. We are looking at the need in a considerable amount of our areas, especially the more developed areas, to have more connectivity and even through the neighborhoods. But that's another good point, that in the rural areas, we may not want that on every street, or at least not on every side of the street. But we may want it actually right in it and to be a part of that roadway within subdivisions. And that might not be a bad way to accommodate that additional non-motorized transportation.
Agreed, and that could blend in nicely. That's an excellent point. Perfect. No, other than that, we're excited in seeing the development coming through to Grand Blanc Township. I'm super excited for the Dort Highway expansion because I also go to Burton every day. So to be able to go from Grand Blanc up to 75 would be fantastic. But no, other than that, the story map was really interesting. I really like that condensed version, cliff notes, if you will, of the master plan draft document, because it really consolidated a lot of information where, while I'm familiar with planning and understand a lot of the technical verbiage, sometimes it's just, whoosh, give me the guts. So I thought this was very well done.
I'm so glad to hear it. Well, hey, thanks for taking your time to come. I really appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. I do have to give my props to FNB, who told me about it. I don't live in the township, so I'm not familiar. I don't get all the notices and things like that. So we've been working with them on some of the development ideas. And she's like, hey, this story map's out there and the master plan is being revamped. You might be interested. I'm like, okay, thanks. So
Good.
we have a good support system of community businesses as well who are very interested in the success of the township. So
Sure.
it's a great place to be in.
Indeed. Well, I would like to go ahead, if there's no other comments, I'd like to sort of jump in. And Leah, I'll need you to help me a little bit with your screen there, and hopefully I can help kind of guide you to this. If you take a look at right in the middle there, all of the commissioners who are online right now had a chance to see a letter and an email that I sent out relating to this area here in blue. I'm moving my cursor like you can see it, but it's where Baldwin and the I-75 come together. We did get a letter from the Downtown Development Authority through David Laddie, and there was a request to take a look at that area and give some consideration to allowing a greater level of flexibility, a higher level of flexibility in that area. And so we did, rolled up our sleeves and took a good look at that. And you'll see that just north of there, where I believe north of that is, we're calling it Hollywood here, I think. We might want to give some additional thought to that.
Nobody gave me a better name. I would change it, but I didn't hear anything better.
It's been bounced around a little bit amongst us, but we haven't quite gotten brave enough to identify what that might be. We may just want to call it the Holly Entertainment Area or something. But in any event, this area here, off the freeway, off the railroad tracks, and off Baldwin Road, that is an area that had been talked about for a while for enhancing the development opportunities there. And as we went through the land use mapping process, it was decided to go ahead and make that entire area cohesive. So it changed from what was previously there. If on the very bottom right corner, maybe you know, from this map, I don't know how far up to go, but there's a white line kind of off to the center of that, in the middle of it, and then a little white dot. If you go to that white dot and draw kind of a square in that corner there, you would see that that is actually currently has a master plan designation of neighborhood commercial. And the zoning is also neighborhood commercial. And if you move up along the freeway and to the north and along the freeway, even going a little bit east, that area kind of in the middle is currently medium density residential. And so, and then the remainder of it, the portions that abut the residential developments that are to the north, and then up that flagpole portion there coming down from Cook, that area is all residential now. So guess what? If you look at our flexible development standard, if you will, for the master plan for that district, it includes all three of those designations. And so it's almost seems like sort of a natural approach to dealing with this. And more so, as I looked at it from an analytical standpoint, I realized that you got a lot of that property that abuts the freeway. And that isn't real conducive to, you know, at least not the kind of single family development that was proposed there. It's more so along the lines, at least from a land use standpoint, it's more along the lines of potentially, if you're going to get any kind of residential, that'd be a higher density typically. Similarly, if you go up to Cook Road along there, you see that it abuts a railroad track. And again, that's not a real ideal location for a high quality residential development. And the reason I say that is because you've got noise. Now, there's not a lot of trains that go by there, but it's a train track, and there's a good amount of cars that go by the freeway. So you're going to have those basic background noises in there. And so the idea, and if you jump across those tracks, you'll see all that area above the interchange is all commercial. So as it stands right now, that is all residential up there. As I'm saying, the middle part is mostly medium density, and the bottom quarter is commercial. So the idea there is to allow for flexibility and to allow a mix of uses to go into that area. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all going to be mixed together. That means that you could have development along Baldwin, and you could have development along the freeway and up the railroad tracks that would be more commercial, or at least a higher intensity in its land use. And then the areas along the existing residential, you could start you could bring in the lower density residential in that area, and then transition that into a higher density or more intense land uses as you move down towards the freeway. So it really does seem to lend itself very well to the possibilities of creating this mixed use, doing it as the master plan is calling out typically through the application of a PUD, in order to ensure that we get, you know, a substantial benefit to the community for whatever that development might be. And it also gives us the ability to ensure that whatever potential impacts there might be can be mitigated to a point of insignificance to avoid, you know, potentially impacting those neighbors to the north. Now, there's not an awful lot of frontage of close proximity between the properties in the existing residential up there. I think if I counted it, I think there's probably 35 or so houses right along the edge of that. And I say right along the edge, it'd be their rear yard, or, you know, they've got 40, 50, 60 feet of setback already. So, and maybe even more in a lot of instances. So, you know, there's already a certain amount of buffering and stuff there. But if that were to be developed with residential and even multiple family or higher density residential, I just don't see that causing a great deal of conflict with the existing or surrounding land uses. So the idea there, now that we've had a chance to take a better look at it, is to create an environment that's more consistent with the existing land use designations, as well as the existing zoning designations. We wouldn't be creating any nonconformity as a result of this modification versus the one that we were proposing before. So I think it goes a long ways to meeting the goals and objectives of the community, as well as specifically the DDA, but also from an economic development standpoint, it really does open the area up for more development. You've got Tech Village, immediately south and to the east here. That whole area is Tech Village that runs all the way over to Saginaw. You've got a higher density residential that we're proposing right there along Baldwin. And so, you know, I think we're doing good work here with regards to the possibility of providing for that flexible development land use designation. And so that's sort of what I wanted to bring out. I did put most all of that in an email and in partial in the letter from David Laddie. I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Yancho about this, but before that I spoke to David Laddie, I spoke to Leah, and we were able to conclude that, you know, that was a good idea. It was very responsive, but also very responsive to the development needs of the community as well. So that's why you see that, and that's been put on there just for purposes of this conversation. Hopefully, you know, this isn't, you know, a great big issue for the Planning Commission. This is here for illustrative reasons this evening. But, you know, it is intended to stay on there until the public hearing. And, you know, tonight we're not here to deliberate per se on it, but questions about that are, of course, will be well received and very important. We just simply wouldn't be able to make decisions this evening. It's not a public hearing and it's not a meeting. It's simply an open house. So that's that.
This is Vince. Can I raise another issue?
Sure.
And I'm addressing this to Mark. Mark, for our next meeting, December 3rd or whatever it is, put on the agenda the discussion of Hollywood, please.
Oh, sure.
I may be the only one that's opposed to that, but and it bothered me that it's in the master plan draft, that people won't understand what that is. But nonetheless, you and I have talked about it a few times. And so let's at least resolve that naming at our next meeting.
Well,
Good idea.
Vince, do you have any, I mean, honestly, that's a small comment. And if you just, you know, sent it to me in an email, I would take it and change it. I don't know that it needs to be made by the body. So I'm just curious,
Yeah.
what would you like to see it called?
Well, I haven't given it much thought yet, but I think, you know, we're naming a certain segment of the township. So I think the commission should talk about it, not just what Vince thinks. That's why I asked Mark to put it on the agenda.
Yeah, this is Dolores. I certainly agree with that, and I think I've run that idea by Mark as well. But the name just doesn't seem to fit, and you know, I would just throw out there, you know, most people recognize that area as Trillium, so you know, why not something that incorporates Trillium?
You could call it Bandersky Corners.
See, now you're talking. Are you okay with Dumichel Plaza?
But again,
How about maybe the Trillium Development Area or the Trillium Opportunity Area?
for Holly Trillium, Holly Road and Trillium, you know.
What about Holly and Baldwin? Anyway, let's talk about it at the meeting, and all of us can think about some names and bring them forward.
Okay, well, everybody's on notice. We're not leaving that meeting until we have a better word.
And yes, and don't hesitate to send a few of those ideas in advance. That way, you know, we have a chance to maybe work through that a little easier.
Yeah.
But I do like the Trillium thought, because you're right, that is the landmark there. And maybe that's a good name, Landmark Development Area or something. But anyway, we'll give that some thought.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very good point.
I guess the other comment I would make, and this just to you, Leah, I mean, that was an excellent recap. You certainly know your stuff, and it comes off extremely well. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's awful nice. Thanks, Vince. I appreciate that.
I think the township made the right choice in hiring Beckett and Rader, that's for sure.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
That coming from one of the guys on the selection committee, I might point out.
So nice work.
We've really heard nothing but good things about this, and I did convey that to Leah, made that clear that, you know, we've had a lot of good comments. Matter of fact, one of the lead advocates for the Grand Blanc grid, gosh darn it, I'm not thinking of the term she used, and I wish I could, because it was quite a flattering term. I'm gonna see if I can find it while you guys carry on.
I guess I just wanted to maybe comment on this flexible development area that's been added to the map. To me, it makes sense, gives us a little more flexibility instead of kind of isolating us into what areas need to be neighborhood commercial or medium density. You and I talked a little bit earlier today, Mark, that the one concern that we really have to pay attention to is vehicular access into that property and any negative impacts that would need to be mitigated. That could be potential up in the north end of that residential area. So just something we'll need to keep in mind.
Could you say a little bit more about that? Like, is the concern that a right-of-way would be too wide, or what is the specific concern?
It's been a while since I've looked at that, but if I remember correctly, there is a street stub from the existing development into that property that's kind of back in the rearmost portion of that property. And I would be very reluctant to have commercial access through an existing residential street.
Right, sure.
Sure.
Good point. And that's the beauty, if I'm on still, I don't know if I'm,
Yep.
yeah, it's like it, you know, that's the beauty of still having, you know, regulatory control over the zoning in the area, and, you know, being able to manage it from that standpoint. But absolutely, you know, access is going to be critical. There is access from that neighborhood. There's also access from Cook Road, and there's access, of course, from Baldwin. So, you know, there are a couple of areas where, you know, access into the property isn't reliant upon, you know, just that particular area.
Yeah.
You know, the area from that neighborhood, the Pulte project, I think is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, here, I have the term now. The term was cogent is the word. At least that's yeah. So I think that was well noted, and it says it was well done. So all good stuff.
And that was from the folks at the Grand Blanc Grid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm so impressed by their efforts. I think there's a real asset that you guys have in the township to have some citizens that have gotten together and are like, we're going to do something about this. Because, you know, I mean, usually my recommendation would be, please go try to find these people because you can't move forward without them. So
Right. That's true. I agree 100%. No, they're truly a force to be reckoned with, and you know, one that is going to help drive, I think, a lot of our effort in the non-motorized transportation arena. Plus, it behooves me to point out that we have a new, very energetic and very well-versed recreation director on board now, Pat Linehan, and he is doing good work. He and I and the good folks from the county have been talking. We've been talking about this plan and the relationship to the Parks and Rec plan, and the need to give consideration to, you know, what we can when it comes to development and how we can connect these developments and find not only policy documents like the master plan that help us to support legislation, but to actually move forward and adopt legislation that puts us in a position of being able to to be sure we're getting the kind of improvements, infrastructure, if you will, in our developments that lend itself to a much higher quality of life throughout the entire community. And I think that that's where, and part of what this plan here is helping us to accomplish.
Lynn, I have a quick comment for you. On page 96 of the draft for public review master plan, the flex area is not shown on the map. And on the printout of the map I had, the flex area wasn't shown either. So it's the information that you guys are looking at tonight's not what.
Right. That was put in here for them just to have this conversation about that particular piece.
Like, shoot, because if people are going to know about that, that's I'm like,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
appreciate
We
that.
wanted to point that change out. Thank you for recognizing that. 96, page 96 has been the one that we've probably had the most conversations on. Everybody seems
Right.
to refer to 96.
There's a lot of stuff on that page. But I also agree, Mark, on a development standpoint. I agree that the residential along those heavy corridors and the railroads would be difficult to obtain lending for due to the noise.
Yeah.
So for ability to transition that into a flex development or a mixed use development, I think will make it easier for funding from major lending institutions for their developers to actually build on the property.
Yeah.
Because we've had many residential loans denied due to noise.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've worked in a couple of places now in my career, and I have to say that sometimes what happens is, you know, you get a well-meaning developer that comes in and develops a nice project in an area like this and along either one of these kind of areas. And the next thing you know, the neighbors, they move in, you know, they like it, but it doesn't take long before they get to a point and they want the township to do something about that noise.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, those things, that's just a no-win kind of a situation. And so providing that flexibility, literally, I think is truly the way to go here and provide real opportunities.
I think that's a fantastic idea. It brings to mind the Cherry Hill Village development down in Canton, where they have a lot of commercial on the edges and then the interior is residential, and it almost makes their own little enclave of this little teeny township inside a larger one. And there's so much possibility for unique and interesting things to come into the township in that area. So
Why couldn't we have an easy name like Cherry Hill instead of Holly something?
I mean, that's the name of the road, so they just went with it.
I know, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah, they're on Cherry Hill Road, so they weren't very ambitious with their naming.
Well,
They were
didn't
smart
have
enough
to
not to locate on, say, Canton Center Road or something lame like that, right?
Ridge. They didn't go with Ridge Road, they went with Cherry Hill. So although Ridge can be unique in itself, so, but no, I love those type of developments, so I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Any and everyone else, please, any kind of comments or questions? We got a public hearing.
Mark, this is Ed Brown.
Can you guys hear Ed? Here you go, Ed.
Yep.
You know, we've talked about a lot of things, and one of the things that we've discussed at length on numerous occasions, and was mentioned again today, the Baldwin Holly Road area. And I know that we're wanting to have both Holly Road as well as Baldwin Road upgraded. I'm not sure I'm going to use the right term, but I'm going to call it to a Class A road. Is that the right term I should be using, Mark, or is it a different one?
It is. In Baldwin, there's already a significant effort underway to make that happen.
Well, yeah, that was my point I was getting to is that really is a roadblock, no pun intended, for our development of that area. And do we have to, are we at the mercy of either the state highway or the feds in terms of upgrading Baldwin as well as Holly, especially, and then I think it would involve replacing the existing bridge because it's only a 2-lane road. How do we, are we engaging, or what should we be doing to kind of push that through? Because it could be decades before the state or the feds ever agree.
Well, I will do a little follow-up on this, but I know that we've had conversations with federal as well as state agencies. I'm not so sure about the Holly Road component, Ed. I haven't heard as much about that. I'm more familiar with the effort underway to deal with Baldwin and
Yes.
to get a ramp coming off the freeway onto Baldwin there as well. So,
Yes.
yeah, there are some efforts underway to try to accommodate that.
Well, that's something that's extremely important if we want to continue to develop that area in the township.
Well, some of the things that they look for is the demand, and having a higher level of development, if you will, higher density type of development. It helps when you make those applications. If you're looking at opening a road onto, getting a ramp and getting a Class A road done on a rural road, that's, serving all rural properties, that's a different story. But when you start to put in commercial, and in this, you look around the area, you've got a little bit of industrial right there as well. Those are the kinds of things that really help your application.
Well, on top of that, who's to say that Genesis is not going to expand their campus?
They are going to. They've got a,
And so
yeah.
that necessitates better roads, meaning
Yeah.
better Baldwin, better Holly.
Absolutely. Yep. Awesome points. Very good points. And Dort Highway coming through, all of that, it ends right there. So
Yes.
yeah, a lot of good opportunities. And, I think we've done a good job of looking into the future on this planning effort.
So would it make sense to add a sentence into the text and an action item that just basically supports the, development of Baldwin and Holly roads at that intersection into a Class A
Absolutely.
status? Okay, then that is something that we'll add into the implementation table and also in the text so that it's there.
That's a great idea. Thank you for picking up on that.
Now, if I can again, please, is the goal to have Baldwin Road become a 4-lane road all the way out to US 23?
No, I don't think so, Ed. Again, let me do a little bit of follow up on all that for you, for everybody. I'll send it out to everybody. I don't believe so. I think it has a limitation, but give me a chance to take a look. I mean, maybe eventually, Ed, but right now I know that we're not looking that far.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question.
Mike.
Yes, I think that it might behoove us to have further contact with the DDA in regard to some things like the expansion of Baldwin Road, so that we can include in the master plan or compare our proposed master plan with some of the goals of the DDA. Because we just caught one, but they have an interest in pursuing the upgrades to Baldwin Road and some of the other roads in the area of their proposed developments.
Right. I was suggesting, and I'll suggest it to everybody now, that, we spend a little more time as we move into the future, coordinating meetings and having those opportunities to have joint meetings and joint discussions about, the future and about projects, even current projects, ones that are planned, ones that are on the books, if you will, but also looking into the future and looking at the kinds of things that we ought to be including. One thing that I'm committed to is, and you probably have heard this before, but I've got a couple of good ways of making sure we do this. I'm committed to making sure that we, let our master plan be a working document for us, so when we bring in a project and get it approved, or we go through the process of review, let's just put it that way, that we identify those goals and objectives from the master plan that project is meeting. and or if it's taking us away from it. Those are the kinds of things that we ought to be looking at and checking off as we move along, seeing, noticing, and recognizing our accomplishments. That's just something that I think Leah would be able to say yes to, that a lot of communities just aren't doing that. And there's really nothing wrong with it. It makes good sense to reference, those components of your master plan that your projects are helping you to implement.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. They call it a book that sits on the shelf like a lot of others. And, it happens when, a lot of times you get done with it and that's it. But, we've been active. The Grand Blanc Township actually has been pretty active in keeping their master plan in front of them. And, we need to commit to that. We'll be doing that when we go through our annual report in January. And so, that'll give us a chance to really start to do that. We probably could add an implementation measure that sort of puts us on notice to, be sure that we, review and consider the master plan. I think there was something in there, as a matter of fact. I just have to go through it about, taking a look at that when we are considering our development projects.
Mark, this is Vince, but isn't that what the initiatives are centering around? The work to make the master plan effective?
Indeed, yes. Yep, I would agree. The whole implementation plan is the idea is to make sure that we make it work and that we use it.
I'd like to think that, we would be looked upon by other municipalities and communities and so on as the benchmark for great planning. And we get that through our experts who provide us guidance in terms of what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I appreciate that. And Mike, I'll take just 1 second, but I do want to say that I offer a lot of expert advice, and it is, you guys do your own work, and you are definitely a step ahead in the way you work together and the way that you're kind of focusing on this and your planning history. I think you're well to be commended. What did you want to say, Mike? I'm sorry.
Mark, I think what you said was that we're going to look at the master plan as a living document, and that we can make minor changes to it as we move forward without rewriting the entire master plan.
Right. Yep. And there are some things that we can accomplish without having to go through an entire 63-day review from all the outside agencies and stuff. So, yeah, we'll have to look at that. We got a lot of work to do with our attorney as well and our professional planners here. But we will keep, this thing fresh and keep it moving. It just makes it that much easier when we get to this next 5-year mark and we need to update it or determine whether or not, it's time to update it. So, yeah, that's great. We just need to make it part of what we do, you guys, everybody. That's on every one of us sitting here tonight.
I agree.
Yeah, that's how it happens. We can do it.
Except for maybe you, Blake's mom. Maybe you don't have to show up and do this every week.
I don't mind it. It's always something that has interested me. I've been in environmental consulting for a long time and started my career actually at SEMCOG down in Detroit. It's always interested me, and I can't agree more that having a well thought through plan makes it so much easier for everyone to comprehend what the goals of the township are and that everyone's on the same page. So all the review that you do, it shows and really benefits the overall program and the use of the document. So, and it's nice to hear that it's not written in stone, and there are options for interpretation to a degree that still fits inside the master plan. So as my contact for developers, that's nice to know that there's just nope, that's what it says, no.
Yeah.
Which is great, because there are townships that there's no options.
Right.
Like,
Well,
let me look. No.
Another good place for that to happen is in the zoning ordinance, and we're going to have a considerable amount of work to do in that zoning ordinance, because that's where, you can incorporate certain, flexibility techniques. You can incentivize developments. You can do things that really help to, ensure that you're getting done what your plan calls for. And, the things that I've seen successful are just that, flexibility, as well as incentivizing, certain aspects of the characteristics of the kinds of things you want to see. You get a developer that comes in and is going to provide you with the kinds of things that your township is asking for. Then, there's ways that you can help to ensure, aside from our normal helpfulness, to make sure that that's beneficial to the developer and, of course, the surrounding community.
Right.
So yeah, we've got some good work we can do here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Leah, if I'd have been able to let you stick with your hour and a half, we'd have been able to wrap up right now, dang it. So, but you were right. You were right, hour and a half, but I'll stick around. That's for sure. I'm not going anywhere, but please, I hope if anybody else has comments, please, just step right up. And Ed, thank you for weighing in. Ed is weighing in on this, my blank screen phone. That's just him on my telephone. So he's hung in there. His ear must be burning a little bit, but he's done a good job. Huh?
All three of them.
Ah, goodness. Got some help, do you?
This is Vince, Mark.
Yeah.
Follow up to the previous discussion we just had. And I'd look to maybe you and Leah offline thinking about how to do it, but we talk about keeping the plan in front of us. If every meeting we had a certain amount of time dedicated to some segment of the plan that we either review and say, hey, that's still valid, or we're making progress here, or we're not making progress here, tie that in with the initiatives. I think that's a very strong way that we won't lose sight of it if it's a standing agenda item.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah,
Vince.
I agree.
That's a good point. We're going to be putting together a priority list here soon. If you remember, we talked about that a little bit, and I would suggest that that'll happen in January, and then we'll take that priority list and ideas like this one you just had to the board and have that conversation with them, because as I've said before, some of what we're going to be doing will in fact require board support in a couple of ways, none the least of which would be funding, but definitely board support in regards to policy. So it behooves us to do just that, and keep our master plan in front of everybody. Maybe another way to go would be to make sure that we have a master plan conversation with each of the other boards, the zoning board of appeals, I wouldn't want to necessarily call them the building board, but, on occasion, the historic district commission, you've got the township board, of course, and there's other agencies and groups out there that are going to want to come in and talk to us. Grand Blanc Grid would probably be one of them. So, we
Mark,
just need to.
Can I join in again, please?
Please do, yeah.
I think we've got a literally brand spanking new board now.
Right.
And many of them have no idea what we've been working on for the longest time. I would certainly urge us to consider an invitation to the trustees to come join us at a planning commission, and let us, maybe along with our planner, educate them as to what's been going on and where we're at, so that they have a good feeling about that it's in good hands, meaning in good hands with the planning commission.
Yeah, great idea. We will be doing that annual report. That might be a really nice piece of material to give them when they come in to say hi. Good idea.
So Mark, you were referencing a priority list. Is that part of your annual report? I'm just curious about how you do things.
No, it hasn't been.
Okay.
No, the annual report is really just a reflection of the things we've done.
Right.
And historically, it has not included accomplishments towards the implementation of the master plan. but that very well could be one of them. And, not everything is going to line up directly with, an implementation measure. But, there's enough that goes on that, you can recognize and see that there is a relationship. It's just got to be looked at, recognized, and pointed out.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody feel like they've had their say?
Mhm.
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
There's Dave. Just you could take yourself off mute there, Dave. Can you do that for him, Leah?
Let me see if I can.
Hang on. Dave, on the bottom left, do you have a mute button, a microphone down there of your screen? Yep. Gosh darn it. Let's just give us a second.
If I move my cursor to the upper right, I have a mute and unmute button.
Is that where yours is? Okay. Dave, hang on, buddy. We're going to try to find a way to.
How's that?
There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Hallelujah. I've been in on the conversation since 4 o'clock. I'm here in my office, in the clerk's office, and I've tried to monitor as much of the conversation as I can. There were a couple of occasions where a phone call from a constituent with curiosity about leaf pickup and garbage kind of interrupted me in my listening, but that comes with the territory and the new job that I have. So, I'm just want to say that I am pleased with the conversation that I've heard. I have duly noted that board members need to be keenly aware of what's going on in the Planning Commission, and as a newly elected board member, I will do my part to be an emissary for the Planning Commission with the other board members. So I just wanted to put in a good word there. As I say, just generally pleased with the conversation and with the presentation from you, Leah. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
This is Vince. As a follow-up to your comments, Dave, a board member will become a member of the Planning Commission. And so I would just encourage you and a couple others to make sure that it's the right person.
I understand that. I know that there's a board member vacancy there because of the end of Mr. Mansour's tenure. I had a brief conversation with Supervisor Bennett about it, and he will be, I'm sure he is doing his due diligence and he mentioned actually in the board meeting on Friday, the special board meeting, that he made a passing mention of the fact that there were going to be boards and commissions that he was going to be appointing members to, and he was going to be speaking to the trustees, mostly, I believe, in determining where their interests lay and what boards, including the Planning Commission, whether or not they were interested in participating and being a member. So I know Scott's thinking about it.
Well, you know what we're about, so
There you
can
go.
help Scott.
I'll do my very best.
Thank you.
So, Mark, are you in your office? Is he in his office? I don't know.
He's at home.
I don't know if that-
I'm remote working today. I'll be in my office tomorrow morning.
Okay. No, I just wondered because the rest of the office has gone dark. I'm sitting in my office. The rest of the office has gone dark. I didn't know if I was the only person left in the building.
You might be.
I might be. So.
You might be. Careful.
Okay. Well, I think if there's nothing further, I was planning on signing out if that's all right.
Yes.
Make sure you lock the doors.
Well, I think it locks behind me because until they handed me a card about an hour ago, I couldn't get in the building. They had to keep letting me in because I didn't have a card to open the door. So you know, the township board, township offices are by appointment only now because of the COVID business. So, but I will do my very best. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a very pleasant evening.
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly happy to stick around until 6, you know, that's what we advertise, so the line will be open. But I, you know, don't feel like anybody else would need to do that. Of course, I would defer to Mark on that.
No, no, you're exactly right. I think it's just fine if everybody's done. You've had your say, and please, if something else comes up, just text, email, stop by. Well, make an appointment, as Dave said. But please don't let anything get by. We're going to do this again. At least meet regarding the master plan, and this next time is on December 3rd. Now, Ed did mention to me that he will not be able to be there, and I think he mentioned it at our last in-person meeting. So keep that in mind, everybody. Ed won't be able to be there, but hopefully we'll have our normal robust group, and we'll be able to get through this and go through the public hearing. That sounds like there may be one or two minor adjustments, additions, if you will, but it seemed like there was a real consensus amongst everybody about them. I don't think there was any opposition that I understood or heard or felt. So if that's the case, then what we went through tonight will be reflected, and there will be a couple of changes. So, and what I'll do is I'll make sure that I get those changes and point them out, because you've all had and seen this document for quite some time now. And instead of, trying to go back through it and every page or something like that, I will bring up the highlights from tonight and those things that we maybe adjusted, added a implementation measure to, added a support measure associated with Baldwin Road expansion and things of that nature.
Leah?
Speak again, please.
Well, of course, Ed.
I just wanted to tell all of my colleagues, obviously our professional planner and all involved, I hope all of you have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. Be safe and wear your masks.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank
Leah,
you.
if it's okay,
I will
I'll
have-
stay on. I'll keep my audio open, mute my mic, and take my video off.
Sure.
Because I'm going to be sitting at my computer anyhow.
Exactly.
Okay. That's great.
I'm off.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll
This
sign off. I appreciate the information I gleaned from this open house today, and hopefully everything works out. And again, like I said, it was well done, and it's nice to see a bunch of the board and the groups representing the township available for us to talk to. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your attendance. We appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This is Vince. I'm signing off as well.
Thanks, Vince.
All right, Ian's going to sign off too.
All right,
Thank
folks.
you. All right, we'll
Take
talk to
care.
you later.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Okay. See everybody at the next meeting. Take care.
Indeed,
Doris.
December 3. Thank you. All right, well, there we are.
There we are.
Again, nice job. That went really well. I'm so impressed with our ability to do these things under these conditions. I know, we're all generally, I hope everybody's healthy and doing all right, but it's a challenge, and you've really come through for us in ways that, gosh, we never would have, this would have been a difficult task. It has been a difficult task. I know it's been challenging for you as well. So, but thanks for being up to that task.
Sure.
I really think that we've truly put together a great master plan that we're going to all be proud of. And I'm very encouraged by the commission's interest and frankly willingness to keep this alive. Now, I know that when we get to this point in a lot of plans, we all talk about this, but I have been very lucky in my career, particularly when I was out in Southern California, because you have to report to the state every year about the status of your general plan, they call it out there, and all the things that you've accomplished. It's really quite an undertaking. And so I'm used to that. That's kind of part of that's how I cut my teeth in planning was, that was part of the process. And gee whiz, as an intern, guess who had to put together back then,
Sure.
using slides and stuff. But, I was able to do that and it just became part of what I did. And when I got here to Michigan, particularly when I dropped in over there at McKenna, that just wasn't something that everybody was real interested in doing. It wasn't a big, no, we don't need to do that kind of a thing. And so
Yeah.
always felt a little bit less than real enthusiastic, but Ann Arbor was a little different. Ann Arbor had a little more interest, but then again, we had 7 different master plans in Ann Arbor. We had one for every area of the city.
Right.
And the one thing that I was able to accomplish was getting all of them consolidated into a single plan.
That's
So
pretty impressive.
that was just huge. You don't even know how hard that was. My gosh, that was quite an undertaking, but it was fun. And once everybody got their minds wrapped around it, it went pretty good, actually.
Sure.
Didn't realize how easy it was going to be. We said, well, all we got to do is say these are all just different, areas and elements within a master plan, you guys. We don't have to rewrite, one master plan. We can use all of this as the master plan. We just had to identify how we were going to do it. And who else was down there? Who's one of the other firms that was down in Ann Arbor? Maybe, who is that?
Carlisle Wortman?
Yes, Carlisle Wortman. Rick Carlisle.
Yeah,
right?
Dick. Yep.
Dick, yeah, Rick Dick. Yeah, he was a little curmudgeonly about that whole idea. He wasn't one of our real supporters when we were trying to do that. He kind of came in poo-pooing the idea a little bit, but we managed to get it done. Took us quite a while. We had one that was brand new to the Northeast area plan, and everything else. I mean, I'm telling you, some of these were from the 60s. We had plans that were from the 60s, and our zoning matched that. So we really were behind. It was amazing to realize how far behind a place like Ann Arbor that's thought of as being, one of the leading edge communities.
I know. I'm surprised to hear you say that, right? They have all this
God, it
staff.
was
They have,
amazing.
you would think there's just not a thing wrong down here, but
No, it's a beautiful place.
sure.
But it's organic. It's not because of somebody's master plan. I can tell you that much. That is a much more organic community. And that was one of the things I didn't like about some of the things we ended up doing in the downtown areas. We sort of stifled some of the creativity that folks had over the century and a half or so that the city had been around.
Sure.
Look around at that classic development that's down there still. And I like some of the new development, don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but I like the idea of letting some of these folks have their own way. And we got to a point of identifying on individual streets, the size and, the whole,
Sure.
the size and shape. The term is escaping me right now, but, we mapped it out right down to the doorstep, and I just thought that was a bit much, but still doing good work. I mean, it works for a place like Ann Arbor. They're happening. But in any event, I'm looking forward to being able to bring that up. It can be and should be an exciting and interesting conversation,
Yeah.
I mean, and I know that it's not for everybody, but when you got folks, I think everybody on this planning commission, maybe not, no, Dave did too. They're all citizen planners.
Oh, so
And
they've gone through the program, you mean?
Yeah, in Blanc Township.
That's
Yeah, we're all citizens.
rare.
And that's a big deal for them. It's been a part of what they've done for a good number of years. And, we've got a couple of these guys that have been on board here since 1999. Dan Gellings, 1999, Ed Brown, 2003, so how about you, Mike?
I can't remember the year, but yes, I've been through this citizen planning. And if you're going to stay on and answer questions or help Lee out, I'm going to sign off.
I'm probably not going to answer any. I'm just going to talk.
Well, okay. Well, I'll let you two talk. And then there's no reason for me to keep her company.
No.
Or have somebody to talk to. So I will log off, and then you can talk about me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll talk
Very
about
thoughtful.
your big tree expertise.
Okay. Well, that didn't come up today, that's for sure.
How about that? Usually does.
But that's okay.
Yeah, that is.
Um,
It's almost always a topic.
Okay.
Anyway,
Talk-
thank you, Mike.
Talk to you
Thanks a
both
bunch.
soon.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, pal.
Thank you. You too,
Yep.
Mark. Stay safe,
Indeed.
everybody.
All right.
You too.
No, Leah, I like where we've gone and what we've done. I feel very fortunate to have this group, you know, and they're very respectful. They truly appreciate having a director around. I know that. You know,
That's nice.
they say it all the time. They are a good group of people to work with. And, you know, I know we can do a lot of good things. We haven't always, there hasn't always been that kind of momentum, but you know, when you do something like this, you adopt a plan, this really is a reset. It's an opportunity to reset a few things. And, you know, if we let that go by, then shame on us, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So other thoughts that you might have in that regard, you know, I like what you talked about in the annual plan, you know, really, we never have incorporated anything in there, you know, a section on the master plan. Well, this year it's easy. We updated it.
I know.
Yeah, we can go from there, but it's a wonderful thing that the great idea that you had. I'm always looking for ideas to put into that. I started with just the you know, site plans and special land use items, and then you know, that's what was left over from, you know, when I was a consultant for them. And then you know, I started looking at the other activities that we have, you know, well, gosh, what about the zoning board of appeals? You know, I mean, let's put their activities in there because they're very planning related, almost always planning related. It's
That's a good idea.
Yeah. And so we started putting all those projects in as well and give everybody a chance to talk about it. Hey, what happened here or there? And, you know, one of the tough things about all this is using and finding and taking up people's time.
Sure.
So this ability to record everything and this ability to, you know, have it left over, that's a great tool. And, you know, it's become a lot more common, you know, to sit back and watch a video on your computer or whatever than it was even a year ago, let alone 5 or 10 years ago. So, you know, this is another way that we can do it, you know, just post that. I take all my monthly reports and I put them on the website now. And then I do my annual report and I put that at the end of each of the years. And so, you know, it's just a paper report, but you know, these kind of discussions, you know, we get them posted, we get them put online. You know, it can just be as simple as me putting a note in the planning commission packet to, you know, hey, remember, take a look at the discussion we had, you know, from last year or this meeting about this item. And instead of, you know, having to try to revisit it in a report, you know, because reports don't get read, you know, a lot of times, you know that. These guys show up at a meeting and they haven't, you know, I mean, God bless them, they're wonderful people, but you know, they haven't gone through that effort. And it's as important as anything else. But boy, if you can you know, you can give it to them that way, hand it to them on a floppy drive. Well, excuse me, God, I sound like Biden there for a moment, huh? About listening.
You're lucky I'm old enough to know what you're talking about.
Wow. Yeah, you're on your phonograph. No, and but on your thumb drive or something simple, you know. There's probably something beyond that now, you know. But your thumb drive or, you know, whatever. Well, I'm glad that the discussion about this new flexible development area went as well as it did.
Yeah, that seemed like everybody thought that was a good idea and appropriate and happy to do it, huh?
Well, I did reach out and have a conversation with everybody in advance just to see if there was any real outstanding questions or concerns about it, because I didn't want tonight to be a night that we had to dive deep into it, and that if it was going to take that, I didn't threaten them with another meeting, but that's what I would have done. I'd have had to threaten them with another meeting. But hey, listen, give some thought to that Hollywood thing. It's really been something on our minds. We really have talked about it.
I guess I've just been thinking somebody's going to propose something better, but it sounds like we need to.
I wonder if we could just call it the Holly Opportunity Area or something, you know? I mean, I love that term opportunity with planning. I just think it's a great term. So, or maybe the Holly Opportunity District or something, you know. Now, in the plan, the way that you're referencing it is it comes out through one of those centers. Is that right?
Yeah.
So Holly Opportunity, well, I like to say zone, but I think somebody's already got the opportunity zone.
Yeah.
That's a little too deep, but well, and it's flexible. I mean, it's a flexible development designation there. Well, we'll figure out something, huh?
Yeah.
I just hope all 8 of them don't have a different idea and they're really, going to hold their ground. That could be a long meeting on the 3rd. Go
Yes,
ahead.
that's the problem that we end up, having to go to the mat to resolve. I'll feel better than if it was like, cut down all the trees or something else.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, yeah. This should be an easy one, but sometimes you get hung up on the simplest of things. But
Yeah.
man, Cherry Hill, how easy was that?
I
Throw that in
know.
the mix. Boom.
Looks
There is
nice
that
on a
industrial
map.
drive over there. There is a street called Industrial Drive. But that's not an industrial area for us. That's
Right. I'm thinking that'll give you the wrong idea there.
Right. That's exactly right. So we have to stay away from that. We could just call it the Holly West or something because it's on the west side. Well, anyway, we'll think of something. Well, what do we got here? What time is it? Do you know?
5:51.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you, if you want to bail, you can, if you can leave me on. Otherwise, I'm going to bail.
Oh, you go right ahead. I'm happy to. I got an email to send real quick, and so I'll just run out the clock here. And
all right. Well, thanks a bunch. Great job, like I said, and looking forward to, the wrap up on this. And yeah, good stuff. Thanks a bunch.
My pleasure. Thanks for being such an excellent partner. This has gone just as well as it possibly could have, and I really appreciate it.
I think you're right. This is good. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.